I've got my good friend Allison. I almost said Allison McHugh.
Well, I mean, that wouldn't be not true. Once upon a time.
I know. So I've got Allison Blackburn here. Used to be Allison McHugh, maiden name, and she lives in Johnson City, Tennessee. And we're asking her about sixes on the Enneagram. And Allison, how do you know that you're a six on the Enneagram?
Let's see. I did take a test, not through you, but I guess the Enneagram Institute. Mm-hmm. And I actually paid $12, I think, to take it. I like to have somebody else tell me about myself, not the other way around. I want it to be easy. But I realized with the test, so I typed as a 4 when I took the test, and I realized quickly that I don't think this test is going to tell me which type I am. So I read about a lot of them, and 6 was actually, I think, my third from the test results. But as I read through each type, the 6 really resonated with me, because I think the thing that stood out the most is this worst case scenario mentality. I think my entire life, I very much am a worst case mentality person. I go there very quickly, and I just thought everybody did. And so reading this, I was like, oh, wait a second. I'm definitely a 6. I thought everybody did this. So that is what I really connected with the most is, I have this inner conversation with myself almost on a constant basis of what if this would happen, or what if this would happen, and what would that look like, and how would I deal, or what would that mean about God if that happened? And then a lot of times I'll say out loud to friends, well, worst case scenario, blah, 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 so that's how I realized I was a 6 first. The first way I realized is, I'm worst case scenario all the time.
All right, cool. Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of benefit to that. I'm a 7, so I never have a worst case scenario. Everything's always fun.
Yeah.
And I
you guys are
it's
fun.
Not actually true. Yeah, it doesn't work the way.
Yeah.
So what do you like about being a 6?
Okay, well, there's a lot to that. I think when I first realized I was a 6, I was like, man, I don't want to be a 6. I had all these preconceived ideas that everybody, not everybody, but lots of people were 6s, so it wasn't unique, or a 6 is just the scaredy cat, or anxious all the time, or worry wart. None of those things sounded good to me. So it was almost maybe at the beginning I fought against it a little bit. Are you sure I'm not a 4? That sounds a lot more exciting right now. So I struggled with it at first, because I felt like the stereotype was, well, you're scared of everything and you can't make a decision, and I don't know. I didn't want to be a 6, but the more I learned about it, the more I fell in love with the 6s and became proud of being a 6. So some of the things I'll start with, actually, one thing I love about being a 6 is that worst case scenario mentality, because if I'm in a healthy place, that worst case question doesn't really ever go away, even when I'm walking with the Lord, and even when I'm, I don't know, just in a healthy place, if I'm not stressed out, I'll still think about worst case, but I don't get all anxious about it. And this is when I'm healthy, which is not every day. But so here, a real life example of this worst case scenario playing out almost in a way that I'm sort of proud of is our youngest was diagnosed with cancer. You know all about that. And before that happened, I used to think what would happen if one of our children got that sick? What if one of our kids got cancer one day? I literally asked myself that exact question probably a handful of months before Willow was diagnosed with cancer.
Wow.
But because I did that, it was almost like a way to prepare myself for it. It was a way to, in my mind, I thought about, well, if that happened, then what? What does that say about God? What does that say about me? How would we be okay? How would we live through it? And it was almost like, it almost prepared me, and maybe in a way helped Stephen, my husband, when it actually happened. I could be like, oh, I've already thought about this. So, well, what about this, Stephen, and this? And like, almost like a way of reassuring him, because I doubt he had thought about, I think his personality is more, if it pops up, it goes away right away. Yeah. So I'm kind of proud of that worst case scenario mentality. To me, I feel like it's more accurate to say that 6s are vigilant than they are just anxious and scared of everything. We're looking around at things that could potentially go wrong, or things that could harm ourselves or the people that we love. And in doing that, if we're doing it in a healthy way, we serve a really important purpose in keeping people safe and providing like a peace for our family, almost like a sanctuary in a sense. And again, that's if we're in health. So I think that's pretty cool. Almost like a thermometer of certain situations. And I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've heard that a lot of times 6s, once the event actually happens, like when Willa gets cancer, that one's pretty big. It's huge. You're actually pretty good on the spot once the event happens, because you've already thought about what that would happen and how you would handle it. So you actually kind of care.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And that's when I get on an airplane. That's when I drive, on a road trip. That's, almost every scenario possible, I've probably thought about it. That doesn't mean for me personally that I come prepared with all these things, in case someone has a heart attack at the table next to me. I'm not like prepared in that sense. Like, I know how to do CPR, or I brought all the Band-Aids for the kids at the park. That's not me necessarily, but in my mind, I go there for how to prepare myself, I guess, emotionally. And
Okay, so you're kind of answering this already. It's also pretty tough to have that kind of mindset. What else is hard about being a 6 on the other hand?
Yeah, so like I said, this worst case scenario is pretty constant. So that gets tiring and burdensome. I think there's a lot of times, I deal with stress and anxiety a lot. And I think I just get worn out with this constant, it's like I can't quiet my mind thinking about these things. And so I think sometimes I might, we're not on the phobic stuff yet, but I think sometimes I have the ability to just like, well, if it happens, it happens, but I think most of the time it's kind of this like repetitive, tiresome cycle of like, oh gosh, well, what about this? What about this? And I wish I could just like a 7 pick up and do something and not think about like, well, are we going to have enough food, or we need sunscreen, or like we're going to get sand in our shoes, like we can just go and have fun, not worry about it.
Right. Well, it is helpful for 7s to have somebody say, well, what about the food?
We gotta eat.
We gotta eat. So, all right. So what about you brought up the counterphobic versus phobic continue. Where do you find that you land the majority of time on that? And what is that?
Currently phobic. I think, especially after becoming a parent, now that I'm a mom, I think the phobic, I normally land there. Previous to being a mom, it would still go back and forth. As a kid, I think I was a rule follower, which I think is I think most 6s would associate with that. Authority figures are really important. So I think when we want to feel safe, that's like one of the biggest needs or desires or concerns of a 6 is wanting to feel safe. And so I feel like following rules is very falls in line with phobic versus counterphobic. You might be more rebellious. And I definitely was a rule follower growing up, but went through a season kind of maybe around college where, I was doing things that were, more like an adrenaline junkie would do, taking risks, jumping off waterfalls, doing these things like, I don't know. That is not me today. I'm definitely phobic. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And being a parent, like certain seasons, I guess, and especially after Willa, her struggle, but you feel that more, you would lean on the phobic side. What does that look like? Does that usually look like you're kind of, when you worry about something, that you kind of shrink back or withdraw or want to hop under a table or what?
What does that look? I feel like if I could draw like a picture of it, it might look more like suiting up for like a battle. I don't know, because I know I don't have the ability to hide. I could, but whatever bad thing's going to happen, it's still going to happen. So if I were to hide, have more of this hiding under a table or sticking my head in the sand, then I'd be leaving all the people I love out to dry. And I literally can't do that because, loyalty is another biggie for sixes. And that is something that I love about being a six. And I think that loyalty is so extreme that it pushes me to, I can't run and hide from these things. And instead it's like, what am I going to gather together then so that me and these people can get through it? That makes sense.
Okay. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What else would you like people to know?
I think, so we didn't talk about trust at all, and trust is huge. And again, that's one of those things, though, that when I read about sixes and trust, I'm like, well, everybody feels that way about trust. Trust is important to everybody. But one of the issues I've had with trust, I trust plenty of people, but I have a hard time trusting myself. Like I said earlier, I want, even when typing myself, I want somebody to just tell me who I am. I don't trust that what I feel or I'm thinking is, I don't know if it's not good enough or just wrong. I want someone who's like authority or higher up or whatever to be like, look, this is you. This is what you're supposed to do. Like, do X, Y, and Z. And that I get frustrated with that because I think trusting ourselves is super important. And with that, I think, well, clearly Jesus is guiding this person or they have like biblical wisdom. And so I just want that person to tell me what to do instead of, no, Jesus says that I'm important too. And he says that he's leading me and he speaks to me. So just, it's fine. Like, listen, what do I want? And how do I feel about myself? That means something. And that's been hard to trust myself. And then another thing that's really difficult about being a six is idolizing safety. I know we talked about just getting like worn out, but safety is it's not promised, and it doesn't last. And it's kind of like this side of heaven. It's kind of a false idea anyways. And so having this idol of safety really gets in the way of life, of taking good risks, of growing, of trying new things, so that's a biggie. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that's helpful?
How about, I talked about, like, I like the idea of calling it vigilance rather than like anxiousness, kind of like, I heard it once said, I don't know if you have, apparently the Enneagram, there's like animals for each type. I don't know if that's really a thing.
I've heard.
So for sixes, it's a deer. And if you watch a deer, they seem very timid and anxious, and their ears are always twitching. They're always looking around, and all those things are true, but they still show up. So they don't hide all day long. Like, they come out and allow us to enjoy their beauty and we get to see them. And that, to me, I don't know, that seems more vigilant. Like they're looking around, they're making sure everything's good, but they're still there. Like they still show up. And that, I love that. I think that's cool. So vigilance over like anxiousness. And then I like, I think a stereotype of sixes, a common one could be that we're indecisive, but rather than indecisive, I think it's that we're calculated. We want to think about all the options because we want to make the best decision. And that doesn't mean we're indecisive. It just might mean we take longer to make a decision.
Right.
But I am telling myself that because, I'm like, gosh, I'm so indecisive. Why can't I just make a decision, to myself? But I think we just really need to weigh all the options and take our time.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Well, good. Well, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. It's fun. I love talking about the Enneagram.